Okay, so today we're going to learn how to create some value scales to show a range of values. Value, when you're talking about art, is the relative lightness or darkness that you see in that artwork. That can be in pencil or in a photograph or in a painting. It doesn't really matter, as long as it's all about the relative light or darkness. So we're going to work with creating value. And to practice that, we're going to be using a value scale. So it's basically going to show the gradual transition from lightest to darkest. To do this, the very first thing we're going to do is, if you have a ruler, you're going to grab a ruler and you're going to make a line that is 7 inches long. Doesn't matter if it's perfectly straight or anything like that. We're going to make a 7-inch line and then 1 inch down, and then again in the other direction. And we're going to divide that box into each inch. Now, if you don't have a ruler, you're going to make a long, skinny rectangle, and you're going to divide it into 7 squares. So each of these little boxes is about 1 inch by 1 inch. Doesn't have to be exact, as long as you have 7 squares for our class today. Number 1 square is going to be the lightest. The number 4 square will be your middle value, and your number 7 square is going to be your darkest. So these would be your lightest value. Remember, all of these are values. The middle value and the darkest value. And we want these to change gradually. Now, to draw these, we're going to use our drawing pencil from our art kit. So it's the one that has the little 6B or 4B on the end. You want to have that, because we want to see the way that this pencil draws. That's the pencil we're going to be using. It should be sharpened already, but if it's not, you can find a sharpener. Hopefully you have one of these at your house. In a pinch, you can even scrape the edges with a knife. You just have to be really careful with that. And you can, of course, use an electric sharpener if that's what you have, but a hand sharpener is actually better. They tend to break less, and well, that's not necessarily true, but they tend to use less of they sharpen less quickly, so your pencil will last longer. You won't run out of pencil as quickly. Now, if you want to have handy this eraser, you can have that, but we're going to try to do this without erasing. Now we're going to what people call shade. We're going to try to do some basic shading with our pencil by going from very light to very dark. And in order to change that, we're going to be working with layering, adding more shading on top of the other shading, and we're going to be working with pencil pressure, how hard we push on the paper. The one rule is we are not using the point, just the point. We're using a little bit angled on the side or kind of the flat edge. And we're not going, so no points, no straight up and down. You're going to notice my hand being kind of sideways. And I'm not going to be making lines like this. We're not working with lines right now. We're going to try to do a nice smooth blend. So when you do that, you're actually going to go almost more like little tiny circles. My pencil is moving kind of like in an oval shape, just very small. So my lightest light value is going to be the first one that I do, and I'm barely grazing the paper here. I'm trying to make it barely visible, very, very light. And it's okay if there's some white of the paper still visible also. It doesn't have to be solid filled in here. And notice how far my hand is. That's going to let me make that barely graze the paper. For the second value, I'm going to do just a little bit more. So I'm letting my pencil hit the paper a little harder. And we can always go back to it if we want to. Now I'm going to go a little bit more for number 3. And I'm not smudging anything. There's no smudging yet. We'll do that one next. I'm trying to make my lines almost disappear. And see how it's getting kind of like steps, a little darker each time. I'm gonna speed up the process a little bit, and we go through to number 7. Okay, and there you go. You can see I went from the lightest light to the darkest dark. And if you noticed, I would draw, once I got to the middle value especially, I would draw this value here, and then I would go over it again. So I was going over the same thing more than once to get these dark values. So it's how much you build up layers, which is density, and also how hard you press. Meaning pencil pressure. These are the 2 things that we're going to continue to manipulate no matter what style of marks we're making for our values. These are what you change in order to change your values. All right, and that is our first value scale. That is a true blending, where I did not use anything to smudge. All I changed was to build up my layers and my pencil pressure.